Hi, I'm Patrick Cobb with AARP South Carolina. We're pleased to be a sponsor of the Charleston Post and Courier's Pints and Politics series. AARP is a nonprofit organization, so we don't endorse candidates. For more information, go to aarp.org/SC.
Hi, I'm Autumn Phillips, Managing Editor of the Post and Courier. Welcome to Pints and Politics. We're in Greenville, South Carolina at Tetrad Brewery. I'm here with Ryan Gilchrist, Managing Editor of our new Greenville newsroom where we have 6 full-time reporters. This is our second virtual Pints and Politics. I remember during the first one, before the primary, I was looking into this camera wondering if anyone was there. And at the end, I saw that more than 550. So I might be sitting in your kitchen, in your office, looking at, but know that you're part of something. We started Pints and Politics more than a year and a half ago. We had this idea that maybe we wanted to be here and talk politics, and we were right. During the Democratic presidential primary, we had a beer with just about every presidential candidate. We saw Mark Sanford, we saw Tim Scott, Lindsey Graham visited us last summer, and he's back to meet with Jamie Lovegrove, our political reporter out of Columbia, where we have 11 journalists, and with Skylar Croft, our political reporter, who's been covering South Carolina politics for more than 30 years. I'll turn it over to them.
Here's Senator Graham.
All right, thanks.
Senator, thank you for joining us. We are in Greenville,
Yes.
Which is where the headquarters of Michelin North America are located.
Yes.
A few months ago, the former CEO of that company, Dick Wilkerson, who was on the finance committee of your presidential campaign, announced that he was going to support Jamie Harrison this time around. He wrote an op-ed for the Greenville News about it, and I want to read a few quotes to you because
Sure.
While Dick Wilkerson is one person, a lot of the concerns that he expressed in his op-ed are things I hear all the time from moderate Republicans and from Jamie Harrison supporters. And Dick Wilkerson wrote, "I supported Lindsey Graham until 2017. I saw him as a moderate Republican who could work across the aisle to get positive change made, but I started having real misgivings about him when he failed to mount any significant defense when Donald Trump attacked his best friend, the late Senator John McCain. I asked myself, what is the character of a man who will not defend his best friend? If he won't defend John McCain, why would I expect him to defend any of us in South Carolina? My conclusion was that he was more interested in currying favor than in honoring the memory of a true American hero whom he had described as his best friend. I was extremely disappointed. Then the willingness to work across the aisle seemed to vanish. I do not want to say this is the exclusive fault of Republicans, but rather a reflection of both parties. But Senator Graham was a leader of this divisiveness. His criticism of the behavior of the president morphed into a blind defense." I want to give you a chance to respond.
Well, yeah, number one, I appreciated his support. He voted for Hillary Clinton against Donald Trump. I voted for somebody other than Donald Trump. Trump won, I lost. Unlike Mr. Wilkerson, I want him to be successful. As to my relationship with John McCain, it was one of the most significant events in my life. I talked to Cindy yesterday, and there's no finer person to ever serve in the Senate than John McCain. And Donald Trump, when he says something about my friend John McCain, I push back hard. But unlike Mr. Wilkerson, I'm a Republican. I want Trump to get reelected. I don't want Biden to win. And Jamie Harrison, my opponent, who is now supporting, is the most liberal person to ever run for office in the history of the Democratic Party in South Carolina. I don't know what drew Mr. Wilkerson to me, but I'm glad he supported me in the past, but I haven't changed. I still am pro-life. I do believe in responsible gun ownership, not a national gun registry. The differences between me and Jamie Harrison are stark, and if you vote for Jamie Harrison, you never really were a Republican.
So you called Trump a race-baiting religious bigot.
Xenophobic, race-baiting religious bigot.
And now you're trying to tell us that you haven't changed when you're best friend in Congress.
No, what I'll tell you is that he won and I lost. And go through the Democratic primary and see what they called each other. See, in your business, you only talk about Trump. You know, Joe Biden gets passed from the time he wakes up to the time he goes to bed, and there's only like an hour where he's engaged with people. So I know how the game's played. I ran hard against Trump. He kicked my ass. I accepted my defeat. I want him to win. I've got to know him. I push back when I think it makes sense. On Syria, I push back hard. There's a lot of times I don't agree with the president. Mostly I do. And my opponent would have voted against Kavanaugh. I thought Kavanaugh was a great pick. I advised President Trump to pick Brett Kavanaugh. Any conservative would like Kavanaugh to be the pick. Same with Gorsuch. So if you're a conservative Republican, Trump has done good. He's real military was broken. If you wanted ISIS destroyed, he did. If you thought the Iranian nuclear deal sucked, he got out of it. If you're a friend of Israel, nobody's done a better job than Donald Trump. If he wanted to cut taxes, he has. 200 conservative judges. For all the things that matter to me, Donald Trump's done a good job. Can be a handful, but you're going to have a choice in this election. It's going to be about the direction of the country. And here's what I think. We're going to both do really well in South Carolina.
I've got two questions for you. The first one's not really related to the matters at hand, but I see you over there drinking a beer. Do you consider yourself a beer drinker, and do you have a favorite type?
I really don't drink beer, but I grew up in a bar. So I'm not much of a drinker at all, to be honest with you, but I grew up in the Sanitary Cafe in Central South Carolina. We had a beer joint, what it was, and downstairs we had a pool room, and next door was a liquor store. Literally lived in the back. So I talked to the bartenders and asked them the number one seller. And it's a brand I've never heard of. You talk about the country changing, Pabst Blue Ribbon, Budweiser. Those were the staples of our bar. Now we have all kind of people making beer in every other house in South Carolina. This is an exciting time for the beer people. I don't drink much beer, but I've served more than I drink.
All right, another question for you is TV ads have focused seemingly exclusively on attacking Jamie Harrison. There's nothing in what promote your own record.
Stay tuned.
You've also pointed out that he's raising lots of his money from out of state when you're doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Why is that a political point to make against him when you're doing the same thing? Is this a case of Is this a case of nerves in the fact that you are going after him so strongly with promoting yourself?
This is a business. I've been in it for quite a while. Nobody knows Jamie Harrison. He's never held public office. He was the former chairman of the Democratic Party. He worked for Jim Clyburn. Probably a nice guy. I don't know Jamie that well, but I do know that the money he's getting is coming not only just from out of state, that's not the point, from the most liberal people in the country. Rosie O'Donnell, Barbara Streisand, you name it, the who's who of the liberal left are investing in his campaign for three reasons. They hate my guts because I am helping Trump. I supported Kavanaugh after they tried to destroy his life, and they want to make this a blue state to take over the Senate. So he's getting the money because he supports Medicare for all. He supports the Green New Deal. He supports that radical agenda, and that's why he's getting the money. I'm getting money from conservatives all over the country who remember me from Kavanaugh and appreciate the fact that I'm trying to help the president when I can. And we're both going to raise $50 million most likely. If you had told me that at the beginning of this race, in August, I'd have raised 30 and he'd have raised 29, I wouldn't have believed it. What happened? It's Kavanaugh. I spoke up at a time when the whole country was watching. I voted for Sotomayor and Kagan. I do understand it matters if you win the election, Scholar, that Obama picked two people I would have chose, but both of them were qualified. Sotomayor and Kagan were qualified liberal picks. Kavanaugh was a friend of mine for 20 years, extremely qualified. And I stood up to the assassination of Brett Kavanaugh in political terms, and that's turned the left. I'm helping Trump. They smell blood in the water, and here's what's going to happen. We're going to have a turnout in South Carolina like you've never seen before. Everybody that can get to the polls is going to vote. It's going to be a good year to be a conservative in South Carolina.
You have gone golfing with the president just this past weekend. We got a lot of reader questions about your golfing habits, not in the positive way, because what they say is that you spend all this time golfing with the president, and yet South Carolina there was a recent analysis that found we're 50th out of 50 when it comes to the amount of PPP funds that we've been getting from the CARES Act. There are a lot of problems in South Carolina. You haven't held a town hall in more than 3 years, or an in-person town hall. Obviously, it's the coronavirus pandemic.
Can't do it now. Yeah.
Right, but you didn't hold one for 2 years before this. What is South Carolina getting out of all the time that you're spending with the president on the golf course?
I spent a day with the president. We talked about Afghanistan and how we need to make sure we don't do a bad deal with the Taliban. Remember 9/11? As long as I'm around, I'm going to be in his ear. Don't take your eye off the ball in Afghanistan. The Taliban can't be trusted. Don't allow the women of Afghanistan to go back in soccer stadiums because we're next. So what do you get? We talked about the coronavirus and what to do next. So the PPP program, I was one of the architects of that. I can't make people apply for the loan, but the money is there. You need to go apply. With Tim Scott and myself, I've done probably 20 or 30 conference calls to business people about how you apply for the loan. My worst critic can't say I don't take my job seriously. How many times have you seen me? How available I am to y'all? I come home every weekend. I don't have a lavish lifestyle. I work my ass off. I think I've been a reliable conservative voice for this state, and nobody has done a better job supporting the military than myself. And I learned that from John McCain. I've been to Iraq and Afghanistan 56 times. Well, when I'm over there, I'm trying to figure out about how to keep us safe here. So when I'm with the president, most people would love to spend time with the president of the United States. The fact that he's brought me in his orbit, that he asked my opinion about what to do as a nation, I appreciate that. I enjoy my time with the president, and I think it benefits our state. Trust me, the Port of Charleston is going to get the money it needs, and when it comes to South Carolina, I think I'm in his ear.
This is our question from our sponsor, ARP. If reelected, how will you cut prescription drug prices for all Americans?
Great question. All right, so there's two theories about how to do this. Canada and Germany and other nations buy prescription drugs very cheap. Why? Because they go to the American pharmaceutical industry and say, this is all we're going to pay you. So what happens is that we let foreign countries buy drugs from American pharmaceutical companies really below cost. What I'd like to do is go after this as an unfair trade practice. I'd like to get President Trump, and we're talking about this with Navarro. We had a really great PPP program. That's my bill to allow $7.5 billion tax credit to make gloves, masks, and gas in the United States, not buy them from China. The coronavirus has been a wake-up call. 90% of drug compounds are made in China, not here. I'm working with the president to bring the medical supply chain back. Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, we passed 3 bills in a bipartisan fashion to deal with the generic issue. Pharmaceuticals keep their drugs from going generic because every day they can keep it from being a generic drug. They make a ton of money, and they game the patent system. So it was my committee that passed patent reform that will over time substantially lower drug prices because they play a game with patents to keep the prices up. But I think the best thing America could do is go after these other countries that set prices and make the American consumer pay for all the R&D.
How is that any different than what the Democratic plan is? I mean, what makes the Republican plan
That's a good question. Bernie
makes it so unique?
Basically wants to set prices for everything.
Yeah, but Bernie is off.
Medicare for all is Medicare for nobody. Now, I want you to understand this. I'm 65. I just got on Medicare. All I can tell you out there that their plan is to let 80 million people come on the Medicare and never paid a dime. That's going to diminish the ability of Medicare to service you, and it's going to destroy private sector healthcare. Healthcare is going to be a big issue in this election. If you have healthcare at your employer, I want you to keep it there. If you're on Medicare, I want you to be well taken care of, but I don't want to destroy private sector healthcare because that puts pressure on government healthcare programs like Medicare. But price setting. We have the most aggressive pharmaceutical industry in the world for developing new drugs. If you want to destroy the goose that laid the golden egg, go to the democratic price setting formula, which will stop innovation. What I want to do is make the world share in the cost of developing these drugs. For every one that hits, there are going to be 9 that fail. If you want to get a vaccine to deal with the coronavirus, it's going to come, I think, from the American pharmaceutical industry.
But this was also the same talk that was 4 years ago, that it was going to be the healthcare election. why is all of a sudden this new urgency that we believe you in 2024 or 2020?
Well, Obamacare was a miserable failure. They started out with 5.
Which you're still trying to get rid of in court
Yeah,
as we speak, in the middle of a pandemic.
You know, what I want to do is to take money we spent on Obamacare and grant it back to the states. What does that mean? We'd have a 40% increase in the money we receive from Obamacare because 3 states of the 50 get almost 30% of Obamacare dollars because they have high Medicaid cost. So I'd prefer to block grant it and let South Carolina use the money more wisely. But when it comes to Medicare for all, that's eventually Medicare for nobody.
Unless you fund it properly. I mean, it can be actually Medicare for all.
Do you understand that Medicare is going to collapse in 2032 if we don't do something about it? I'd like, for a guy like me, I should and more for means testing. Younger people need to work a little bit longer, but if you bring 80 million people into the program who haven't paid a dime, it's going to collapse. Look at other nations who've gone to socialized medicine. This is the most innovative healthcare system in the world. You have choices, and I want to make sure you keep those choices. This election is about, do you have any choices left in healthcare?
You have been one of the most vocal opponents to the $600 a week enhanced unemployment benefits that were in the CARES Act. You've argued it disincentivizes people from returning to work. You said over your dead body would it get reauthorized. You know, we had data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that came out in June, which showed that there were 3 unemployed people for every 1 job opening in America. That suggests that the problem, it's not that people don't want to go to work, it's that the jobs aren't there. We've heard anecdotes certainly of companies that are struggling to hire, but you know, there are clearly more issues in terms of the actual jobs themselves.
Okay.
And you know, there are unemployed people in South Carolina, hundreds of thousands of them right now, who are relying on that $600. They don't have it anymore because it's expired, but relying on that to pay their bills, to put food on the table for their families. You met with a lot of business leaders. Have you met with any of those unemployed people? What do you say to them when they're worried about surviving?
Here's what I say. If you lost your job, no fault of your own, and you can't go to work, I'm willing to have the federal government enhance state benefits. I'm not willing to pay people more not to work than to work. People are getting 150% of their wages when you add the $600 to the state benefit. I don't know what world y'all come from, but I come from this world. I grew up in a place like this where you hire people. And when you're paying $23 an hour for unemployment, it puts a lot of pressure on people to hire somebody at $17 and $18. And there are people working that make $17 or $18 an hour. And if you make it $23 an hour, it's a disincentive for people to go back to the workforce. I hear it all over from employers. I want to call my people back, but they're making more than I can pay them, and they're pissed at me. So I think it's very fair to say to everybody who's lost their job, I'm willing to give you 100% of what you made up to a certain point, but I'm not willing to pay you more to be unemployed than when you were working, skewing the whole economy. And in a democratic world, they'd give you endless money to do nothing. People have lost their job, no fault of their own. I want to help them, but I don't want to pay them more not to work. And if you don't get that, that's a big misunderstanding of the way the economy in South Carolina works. Go to Charleston, go to Myrtle Beach, go up and down the coast and ask employers, are you running into a problem of getting your workers back? And they will say yes.
Also not just the wage growth has not kept up with the economy as it's been growing. If people are making more from unemployment than they would at work, shouldn't they be making more at work?
You're paying people $47,000 a year in unemployment. The average teacher after 20 years in South Carolina makes $47,000.
Is that right?
Well, let's pay teachers more, but you don't really, honest to God, don't understand the economy. Do you want the minimum wage in America to be $47,000? Are you willing to pay the cost of what it would be if we paid everybody in this bar $47,000? If you've run a business, they can't afford to pay these people $47,000 because they don't make that much money. So what I want to do is enhance state benefits. I'm the first Republican to reach across the aisle to Dick Durbin and say, listen, Dick, this thing's going to last a while. Let's add some federal money on top of state benefits to be capped at actual wages. Well, we wrote the bill so you get $924 a week in South Carolina not to work. I wanted it to be 100% of your wages, not more. We need to fix that. To me, it is not unfair to say, we will pay you the money you lost, but we're not going to give you a pay raise. And I'm not going to support a bill that continues to pay people more not to work. That skews the economy. And the best way to get wages to grow is in the private sector, not the government. We got Michelin, we got BMW, we got some of the best companies in the world coming to this state because it's a good place to do business, because taxes are low, regulations are reasonable, and people work hard. So under President Trump, African-American wages rose faster than any time since we've been recording. The Hispanic community as a whole was doing better under President Trump. This stuff works. Along comes the coronavirus, and we've got a real mess on our hands. Count me in for more money to help people supplement their unemployment. Count me in for money for PPP loans so these people can stay open if they can't survive on 50% occupancy. Count me in for helping state and local government, but not $1 trillion.
Okay. 2 questions. You said something I want to go into first. Sorry, I have 2 questions. One I want to go to is you said that this thing is going to be around for a while. How long would you suspect or predict or say that the American people should be in coronavirus mentality?
Well, that is the ultimate question. And I thought that the summer would put a dent in it, and we saw it actually increase in the summer. So here are your choices. We locked the state down for 6 weeks, and I think that did slow down the spread. Then we opened back up. Memorial Day was bad. The bottom line is, until a vaccine is available, we're going to have to just manage just the best we can. About playing football. I think it's better for the athletes to be in a controlled environment than it is not to be in a controlled environment. I hope we play college football. I hope we give parents an option to go back to school, because if we shut all the schools down and nobody can go back, what do those parents do who work? So there's a downside to shutting the country down. It's a tough call. I would say that until we get a vaccine, we're going to have to do the best we can to manage it without destroying the economy. And I predict that a vaccine will be available in October and November, but not widely available at the beginning of next year.
Are you basing that on anything scientific or a prediction?
Dr. Fauci yesterday.
Okay.
So I talked to him. I mean, this guy, a lot of people are down on Fauci. I'm not.
Including the president.
Yeah, but I think he knows what he's doing. I think Birx and Fauci, but you got to balance things. Everybody stayed in their house and never left their house. They never went to church. They never went to school. They never visited anybody. That would slow down the virus, but it destroy the economy and drive us all crazy. So everything's a balance. And what I believe is, if you wash your hands and wear a mask, and to all those who doubt wearing a mask, you're wrong. Wearing a mask helps. And you see a beginning of plateauing. And what I think's happened is that South Carolinians are taking social distancing, hand washing, and mask wearing more seriously. That's probably the best thing we can do till we get a vaccine.
All right. On Friday, President Trump signed a series of executive orders to try to fill the gap left by Congress. Whenever President Obama would threaten to do the same thing, or if Congress didn't act, you cried foul. Why is it okay for Trump to do it and not Obama? And do you think Mitch McConnell should call everyone back now and get the deal done?
Well, I think we're close to deal. We'll make a little news. I talked to the president over the weekend. I talked to Meadows, and I talked to Mnuchin. I think there's an agreement on PPP, second round of loans for businesses. We're going to make sure that 300 or less employees, you got to have 50% drop in income. Then we'll let you get a loan to keep your business from going bust. There's $2 for people that make less than $75,000. There's an agreement on how much money we want to give schools for the most part. There's a pretty much agreement on vaccine and testing. It's the unemployment benefits. The president said $400. I could go with that. We gave state and local government $150 billion last time. The Democrats want $1 trillion. That's not going to fly. So I think we're close. Big supporters. He can defer payroll taxes. Nobody's ever done it by executive order before. He can't. Then Congress can only say you don't have to pay it back. So he can defer payroll taxes. He can take the emergency money under the Stafford Act and pay people for lost wages due to an emergency. But that's of limited duration. What is necessary on unemployment and on the payroll tax to help the economy. But the preferred solution is a congressional deal. Count me in on a deal. Half my conference won't vote for a phase 4. I will, because I see the need.
Would you have said the same thing about executive orders if it was President Obama?
If we were in a pandemic like this, I hope I would try to work with the president to get, listen to me, some money for state and local government, not $1 trillion. We need to help unemployed people, but not pay them $600, which is, skews the whole wages 150% above the actual wages here in South Carolina. So I think there's a deal close. But did I have a different approach? I opposed him because he did things I didn't like. I got elected basically to vote against most of what Barack Obama did.
The complaint was also that it was authoritarian to be using executive orders to I
never said he was. I said the executive order on DACA I thought was illegal, but I worked with him on the comprehensive immigration reform. I helped President Obama where I could. I actually liked President Obama. I think he and the First Lady, Michelle, represented our country well. But, I stuck my neck out on immigration reform. I tried to work with him on a climate change bill. So the big difference is Obama's a liberal Democrat. I'm a conservative Republican. You should expect us to disagree not all the time, but a lot of the time.
So you mentioned the payroll taxes. You've been a supporter of payroll tax cuts and talked favorably about payroll tax cut. A lot of your own Senate Republican colleagues, let alone the Democrats, are not on board with this. The reason they say is two reasons. One of them, a lot of the people who we need to help the most don't have jobs right now. They're not going to be helped by a payroll cut.
They're unemployment help.
Sure, but they're not going to, you need to focus the money on the people who need it the most. It's also going to reduce really critical revenue for funding programs like Social Security, like Medicare.
No, I got you. Payroll taxes, there's 6.5% basically for the individual and for the employer. In the CARES Act, we deferred payment by the employer. What is he doing? He's saying, what about the employee? So that 6.5% that you pay, we're going to defer it to the end of the year. Bush supported a payroll tax cut. Obama supported a payroll tax cut. I've been consistent. I think it's one of the best ways to energize the economy. The $1,200 check will help. If you give people a 6.5% tax cut between now and December, the end of December, that's more money for them. Economy. The problem is the economy came to a halt when we shut it down, but we had to do it to deal with what I thought was a critical moment, the virus. So my goal is to re-energize the economy. What can I do to help people hire, get people back at work? I want to have pro-growth policies. We need to resurrect the economy this time around. So I'm for the payroll tax cuts. And a lot of Republicans won't vote for another round of stimulus because of the debt. And I get that, but this is a war. If you believe this is a war, then we need to fight it. There are hospitals and doctors who've had a surge of cases. They need more help, not less. The PPE problem is reemerging again. So I want to put some money into our healthcare system. How do you safely go back to school if you don't rearrange the classroom? These are realities that people face. And I want to live in a real world. And that is Democrats and Republicans have a different view of the world, but sometimes we have to work together. And I think I've got a record of doing it when it matters.
We're pushing up against the clock. I see that. Okay. I will want to come back to Pints.
Don't drive.
August 26th, we're going to have Jamie Harrison at Edmonds Oast in Charleston at 5 o'clock. And we want everyone to sign up at postandcourier.com.
Absolutely.
So it gets a good crowd. Love you to sign up and be part of that if you want to as well.
Sure. So in April, I'm still a timeline of some of the things you've said about the virus pandemic. In April, you said that rate under 50,000, it would mean we've acted decisively. And you said the strategy and policy regarding the virus, 100,000 deaths. That was a quote from you. In May, you said the closer we can have it to 120,000 total deaths, I think you can say you've limited the casualties in this war. We have now crossed 160,000 total deaths. Has the Trump administration fundamentally failed at mitigating the damage of this virus?
I would say the whole world has had a problem around. Dr. Fauci said February the 29th of this year on the Today Show, should I go to a movie? He said, yeah, go. Should I go out to eat? It'll be okay. We didn't really find out into March how transmittable this was human to human. Dr. Fauci wasn't wrong. It's just we didn't have all the data. The hope was that the flattening of the curve that took place from the 6 weeks we shut the government, the whole country down, would be sustained. All I can say is that when President Trump banned travel from China into the United States, I think he saved a couple million people's lives by not allowing it to spread in our country. He got the crap kicked out of him by Republicans and Democrats. So when I say things like that, it's based on me talking to Dr. Fauci. All I know is that the vulnerable populations, nursing home residents, we need to do everything we can to test as much as we can. To safely go back to school, we need to rearrange the classroom. I am hoping a vaccine will be coming in October and November. And the bottom line here, folks, is that we're in a war with this virus. Let's just keep plugging away.
Let me ask you one last question real quick. We're coming up on an election. There is an effort to expand absentee voting in South Carolina, and there's talks about more mail voting around the country. You voted by mail multiple times, and yet you and President Trump have voted absentee by mail. You have voted absentee by mail.
I don't think so. I think I actually voted in person.
The Oconee County Register, and they found that you had voted
by mail?
Yeah, it did in 2006, 2008. And regardless, millions of people have voted by mail very safely and efficiently. I'm okay voting absentee by mail. There have been very few actual cases of fraud in the history of voting by mail. Where is the
How do you know that?
I mean,
who told you that? Who told you that?
There's a news outlet.
What study?
There's a news outlet called News 21 that focuses
who's News 21?
They focus exclusively
I'm doing
on
to you
voting.
what you do to me.
I understand.
I'm just screwing around with you.
I understand.
So let me answer your question. I voted absentee. I don't think I did absentee by mail. I don't remember it, but I voted absentee a lot. I go early voting absentee because it's just easier to do. I don't mind voting absentee by mail. I don't mind early voting. I want to make it easy to vote. What I mind is for everybody living and dead to be sent a ballot, whether you ask for one or not. So yesterday or last week, my neighbor, they sent his shirt to my house. He ordered it on Amazon, and 2 of my bills went to his house. Now, the post office is not perfect. This idea of mailing everybody a ballot whether they ask for it or not is ripe for fraud. Expanding absentee voting, voting by mail. Do you not understand the problem if you just mass mail out voting rolls when a lot of people are dead? That's not a good way to do business. I think it's a terrible way. I think you should interact. If you want to vote absentee, call up the folks and say, I want to vote absentee. There'll be a record of you asking. I don't like the idea of sending out millions of ballots to the ether and hope it all turns out well. I'm dead set against that.
They send out applications for ballots, but fair enough.
Fair enough.
We'll pick this up at the next round. All right, do this again.
Yeah, totally. Keep buying the beer. I'll come back.
Go another couple hours.
I'm a cheap date. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Senator.
Thanks, Senator.
All right, a couple of things before we wrap up. One, in case you missed it, Jamie Lovegrove has been doing a series of issue-based stories about this race. They're worth looking up at postandcourier.com if you haven't read them. Thank you very much to our sponsor, AARP South Carolina. They have funded every Pints in Politics for 2020. And thank you to Tetrad Brewery in Greenville for hosting us. Before I leave, I want to give you Ryan Gilchrist, who is launching our newsroom in Greenville. 5 full-time journalists. I'm going to pass the microphone to him so he can tell you about our efforts here and a little bit about himself.
Well, first of all, we're glad to have everyone in Greenville tonight. That's exciting. About 6 weeks ago, got started here in town. We officially launched Post and Courier Greenville last week. As Autumn said, 6 full-time journalists working right here in Greenville. We're right downtown. Our address is 1 North. Excited to be here and to bring Post and Courier's coverage to the upstate. I have been managing editor for several years. Excited to be here doing that now. We have an experienced staff of journalists, most of whom have been in Greenville for a long time. So that's exciting as well. We feel like we can really hit the ground running. What can you do to help us? Well, we'd really love it if you'd subscribe. If you just want to sample us a little bit, visit postandcourier.com/Greenville. Be sure and sign up for our newsletter. You can find out everything you need to know. I'll send you a note twice a week so we can start a conversation. Like I said, again, it would be great if you'd subscribe. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. A simple search for Post and Courier Greenville will find it. That's all you really need to know. Thank you again, Senator Graham. Thanks. Yes, sir. You heard it from him.
Endorsed.
I'm not going to argue with him.
If they don't do something, they're going to fire this guy. Save his job.
Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next time. After more than 2 decades in the news industry, I've come to respect certain ways of operating, and the Post and Courier embodies so many of those things. Good quality local journalism with context, with intention. We're having these discussions about why a story matters and how it matters to the community before we move into the process of reporting. To be a part of that is just such an amazing opportunity, and I think that it will be evident in our work here in Greenville. Without the support of our subscribers, it's just impossible. Genuinely, we're asking for you to make an investment in us because we are making an investment in the community, and it's so important to have that support in order to do our jobs properly.